breaking news, and no, not talking about the kind of breaking where your phone screen shatters because you dropped it during a TikTok dance attempt. I'm talking about the kind of breaking where reputations get smashed into a million little pieces and careers get set on fire for the whole internet to roast marshmallows over. Tell me, have you ever seen someone claim they're the innocent angel of the story, only to get caught in glorious high definition for doing exactly what they swore they didn't do? Oh, you haven't? Well, buckle up, grab your popcorn, and maybe a helmet. Because what I'm about to show you will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about Kirk Frost. Yes, that Kirk Frost. Mr. It wasn't me. Mr. They're lying on my name. Well, according to Mendeecees and the receipts he just dropped, Kirk wasn't just lying. He was practically auditioning for the role of most obvious villain in a courtroom drama. We're talking CCTV footage so clear you could count the pores on his face. This is the kind of tea that doesn't just spill, it floods the room, short-circuits the lights, and takes the whole building down with it. And trust me, you're going to want to see every frame. All right, let's rewind and set the stage for the biggest celebrity plot twist of the year, and I am not talking about some petty Instagram unfollow or a passive-aggressive caption. This is full-blown, career-ending, pack your things and delete your socials kind of drama. The kind of story that makes you stop mid-scroll and forget whatever you were supposed to be doing. Our main character in this mess is Kirk Frost, a man who, until a few hours ago, was parading himself around as the innocent poster child for wrongful accusations. He has been giving interviews, looking straight into cameras, talking about truth and integrity like he was applying to be the motivational speaker of the year. And then there is Mendeecees.com collected and apparently holding the kind of proof that could sink a ship. If this were a movie, Kirk would be the guy confidently delivering his lines while the audience already knows the plot twist is coming to crush him. If you have been living under a rock or in a Wi-Fi dead zone and somehow missed this feud, here is the quick catch-up. Kirk and Mendeecees have been at each other's throats for weeks. What started like any standard celebrity spat with vague shade thrown on Instagram stories, cryptic tweets, and those little breadcrumb leaks to gossip blogs soon turned into a public spectacle. Kirk told anyone who would listen that he was the victim of an unprovoked attack, that he was just trying to enjoy a glamorous night out when Mendeecees came charging at him. And many people believed him because, let's face it, Kirk has always had that smooth storytelling ability that makes him sound like he's reading gospel truth. But belief only lasts until the receipts start rolling in, and baby, these receipts were not your regular blurry screenshots or your cousin's friend who claims to have been there. No, Mendeecees dropped cinematic proof, crystal clear CCTV footage from multiple angles with synced audio that looked like it belonged in a high-budget crime documentary. And when that tape played in court, it was like the oxygen got sucked out of the room. There was Kirk walking straight up to Mendeecees with all the confidence of a man who thinks he is untouchable. Standing chest to chest, lips moving, voice rising. And then the punch. The very first punch that Kirk had sworn on his reputation he never threw, landing squarely before Mendeecees had even lifted a hand. And you could practically hear the sound of his entire defense shattering into a million pieces. People in the courtroom froze. Mendes folded his arms and leaned back like he had been waiting for this moment all along. Even the judge looked like they were trying not to react too much, but the air was heavy, and outside those four walls, the internet was already exploding. The clips leaked faster than you could say scandal, and within minutes, Twitter was a battlefield of memes, hot takes, and complete disbelief. One viral tweet said it all. Kirk lied, and the camera caught him in 4K. It's over. And the comments section was an absolute feeding frenzy. Some people were laughing, others were furious, and a few were just sitting back with popcorn watching the chaos unfold. Because this wasn't just a little contradiction, this was Kirk's entire narrative collapsing on itself in real time. For weeks, he had been so convincing, describing how he was blindsided, how the attack left him shaken, how he just wanted justice. But now, the truth was looped on every screen from the courtroom to every gossip page in the country. And you could see it on his face that he knew there was no coming back from this. The once confident posture was gone, his shoulders stiff. Eyes fixed forward, barely moving, the performance over. Replaced by the reality that everyone was now seeing with their own eyes. And if the footage was the first crack in the wall, what came next would blow it to pieces. Because just when you thought it could not get worse for him, the prosecution started pulling out printed sheets and the room got quiet again. These were text messages, not just casual texts, but conversations from before the night of the altercation. And the words on those pages were like nails sealing the coffin. One of them reading plain as day, "He won't see it coming." Let that sink in. The jury sat up, some exchanged quick glances. Because now it wasn't just a fight, it was premeditation. Messages from days before saying things like, "I don't care what happens, he needs to know I am not playing." Each one more damning than the last, and Kirk sat there rigid as they were read aloud. The air so tense you could feel it pressing down on everyone. Because this was no longer a matter of conflicting stories. It was proof layered on proof. And the man who had been playing the victim so convincingly now looked like the architect of the whole mess. The tension in that courtroom after those messages were read was so thick you could have sliced it with a knife and handed it out like pieces of cake, because everyone knew this was no longer about speculation or cleverly spun statements to the press. This was about hard, undeniable evidence that painted Kirk as the aggressor from the very beginning, and just when the murmurs started to die down, the prosecution decided to twist the knife a little deeper by dropping another bomb that sent a visible shiver through the defense table. They had audio recordings, yes, actual recordings of Kirk's voice in the days before the event, speaking in the kind of blunt, confident tone of someone who truly believed nothing could ever touch him. The speakers crackled to life, and there it was, as clear as if he were in the room, saying, "I already know what I'm going to do, no loose ends." And you could feel the collective gasp from the gallery ripple through the air like a shockwave. Jurors glanced at each other in disbelief. Reporters scribbled furiously, and Mendeecees sat stone-faced like a man who knew this was the moment the tide had turned completely in his favor. The recording went on with Kirk, making vague but menacing references to handling the situation, keeping people quiet and ensuring things went exactly his way. The prosecution let it play without interruption, letting each word sink in like a hammer hitting steel. When it finally stopped, the silence was deafening. The judge looked directly at Kirk and asked if he had anything to say for himself, but there was nothing, no denial, no explanation, just the hollow stillness of a man who realized he had been caught by his own voice. And as if that wasn't enough, the prosecution called their next witness, and that's when things went from disastrous to catastrophic for Kirk, because the person who walked into that room was not some hostile stranger, but someone from Kirk's own circle, a man he had been photographed with countless times. Smiling, laughing, looking every bit like a loyal friend. The look on Kirk's face when he saw him was pure dread, and he didn't even try to hide it. The witness took the stand, adjusted the microphone, and in the most matter-of-fact tone said, "I told him to drop it, but he wouldn't listen. He thought he was untouchable." Those words landed like a punch to the gut, and from there it only got worse. The witness detailed conversations where Kirk openly bragged about teaching Mendeecees. It's a lesson, dismissing any warnings that this could blow up in his face. He described the arrogance, the confidence, the complete disregard for consequences, and with each sentence, Kirk seemed to shrink further into his chair while the prosecution stood there letting the testimony burn away. Whatever scraps of credibility their opponent had left by the time the cross-examination came, Kirk's lawyer looked like they were grasping at smoke, throwing out questions that went nowhere and only reinforced the damage that had already been done. The press outside was already buzzing with headlines, ready to go. Kirk Frost betrayed by his own friend, and inside the court, it was clear to everyone that the walls were closing in, but the avalanche wasn't done, because just as court was about to adjourn for the day, Another piece of evidence surfaced, and this time it wasn't from the prosecution, but from a leak that had been making its way through back channels before finally landing in the hands of several reporters in the room. It was a set of private messages from Kirk's own wife sent to a mutual friend days before the fight, warning him not to go through with whatever he was planning. One message read, "I told him not to do it, but he never listens, and the implications were brutal here," was someone from his own home life, essentially confirming he had been warned and ignored it. It wasn't just a hit to his legal standing, it was a direct blow to his image as a husband and family man. The whispers in the gallery grew louder as reporters tipped furiously, knowing they had just been handed another headline. Kirk Frost ignored his wife's warnings. This was the point where the story stopped being just a courtroom drama and became a full-scale implosion, with every layer of his personal and professional life peeling away in front of an audience of millions watching through news clips and social media updates. By the time the judge called it a day, Kirk barely looked up from the table, his once confident swagger replaced by the slow, deliberate movements of someone who knows the ground is disappearing beneath his feet. When court resumed the following day, the media frenzy outside was like nothing you could imagine. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, and every gossip outlet scrambling to get the latest angle on what was already being called one of the most humiliating public takedowns in recent celebrity history inside the courtroom. The energy was different from the previous days. There was no more guessing, no more wondering who might be telling the truth, because the mountain of evidence against Kirk had grown so high that even his own defense seemed to be navigating through hopeless territory. The prosecution wasted no time picking up where they left off, diving straight into a detailed timeline of Kirk's actions in the weeks leading up to the incident. They showed how he had carefully positioned himself in the media, giving interviews that painted him as the wronged party, appearing on podcasts where he spoke with teary eyes about the so-called attack, and even posting cryptic captions online that subtly directed public sympathy his way, while behind the scenes he was orchestrating the very events he claimed to be a victim of. This double life image sent shockwaves through the room, and you could see some jurors physically reacting, shifting in their seats and glancing at Kirk like they were trying to reconcile the man in the footage with the one they had been hearing about for weeks. The prosecution emphasized that this was not an impulsive street corner altercation, but a calculated, set up by someone who thought his public persona could shield him from consequences. Then they pulled up more evidence of how Kirk had used his influence to try and manipulate the narrative in his favor. There were text exchanges with bloggers suggesting they run stories that lean toward his innocence. There were audio clips where he discussed planting details to discredit Mendeecees, and even attempts to coordinate with people in his network to stick to a consistent story. It was like watching a puzzle come together piece by piece, except every piece made the picture uglier and more incriminating. The court sat in stunned silence for much of it, except for the occasional click of a reporter's keyboard as each revelation became another headline. Kirk's legal team tried to argue that the messages and recordings were being taken out of context, but at that point the context was irrelevant, because the sheer volume of damaging material was overwhelming and undeniable. Mendeecees, on the other hand, continued to play his role with the calm precision of someone who knew time was on his side. He walked into the courtroom each day, composed in sharp suits, while Kirk's appearance grew more disheveled and tense. This visual contrast became a story in itself, with commentators noting how it symbolized the unraveling of one man's lies against another's quiet vindication. The prosecution's final witness was a legal expert brought in to explain how Kirk's actions before, during, and after the fight could meet the criteria for multiple charges, including assault, premeditation, and obstruction of justice. The witness broke it down so clearly that even those unfamiliar with legal jargon could see how serious the situation had become. The idea that Kirk could walk away with just a slap on the wrist was fading fast outside the courtroom. Public opinion had turned into a tidal wave against him. Hashtags calling for accountability were trending. Former collaborators and friends were issuing statements distancing themselves from him. Brands Pulling sponsorships and upcoming appearances were being canceled one after another. Financial analysts even began estimating the fallout in numbers, suggesting Kirk could be facing losses in the tens of millions between legal costs, lost contracts, and potential civil suits as this all played out live across every platform. The entertainment industry was already treating him as a cautionary tale about how quickly everything can collapse when receipts come out. The judge made it clear that sentencing, if a conviction came, would not be lenient, citing the premeditated nature of the evidence and the attempts to mislead both the court and the public. Kirk sat, listening, eyes fixed on the desk in front of him, as the reality of his position became unavoidable. By the time the day's proceedings ended, it was obvious to everyone in that room that the verdict was a formality. The real sentence had already been handed down in the court of public opinion, where Kirk Frost's name had gone from celebrity status to a permanent example of how arrogance and deceit can bring down even the most carefully crafted image. So here we are at the end of this wild ride, and if you thought this was just another celebrity squabble gone wrong, think again. Because what we've just witnessed is the kind of scandal that doesn't just trend for a week, it becomes a permanent fixture in internet history. We've seen the footage, we've heard the audio, we've read the messages, and the picture they paint is crystal clear. Kirk Frost's downfall is not just about one bad night. It's about the lies, the arrogance, and the belief that you can outsmart this truth. And if there's one thing this case proves, it's that in the age of cameras, receipts, and social media, there's nowhere to hide now. I want to hear from you. Was Kirk ever going to get away with this? Or was the evidence simply too overwhelming? Do you think the court of public opinion is harsher than the actual legal system? And most importantly, what does this mean for other celebrities who think they can spin any story to their advantage? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who's been following the drama, and don't forget to subscribe. Because if you think this was explosive, just wait until you see what's coming next, after everything that's come to light. The question isn't just who did what or who's telling the truth, it's what we do with it. Love and hip-hop has always been a whirlwind of drama, secrets, and unexpected twists, but now the stakes are higher than ever. The leaks, the behind-the-scenes chaos, and the manipulations that were once hidden have been exposed, and the power is in the hands of the fans to decide how this story unfolds. Are we going to let shady practices slide, or are we going to demand accountability from everyone involved? Every episode, every confession, every edited moment suddenly matters in a way it never did before. And viewers have a unique opportunity to speak up, question the narrative, and push for truth. Think about it. For years, we watched the drama without knowing the real stories behind the cameras. But now we can't unsee the evidence, and we can't ignore the manipulation. It's time to engage, comment, debate, and analyze. Share your thoughts on every shocking twist, every leak, and every calculated move, because the community's voice is louder than any PR spin. Hit that like button if you want to see the real stories behind the drama. And subscribe to follow the unfolding revelations, the new leaks, and every explosive moment. Love and hip-hop may be scripted, but our reaction isn't, and it's time to make it count. Get count.